He's the Republican candidate for governor. Tom Foley says he has a plan to get Connecticut working again. We're going to ask him to lay it out. Also, we are going to talk about third-party power in these elections. There's a whole slate of candidates who are vying for your vote. You're watching The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. It has been more than a week now since the primaries, and the pace on the campaign trail has picked up. Candidates are beating the streets and looking for votes with only about 12 weeks to go until the November elections. Now, no one knows that better than our first guest. Tom Foley is the GOP's candidate for Connecticut's top spot. Tom, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Also here to get down to business, current business reporter Eric Gershon. Eric, thanks for joining us. Tom, if we could, let's start with some of the unpleasantries right at the top. It was a little tight there in the end.
Yep.
It was a closer margin of victory, I think, than some people thought it was going to be. And some people attribute it to the fact that those negative ads that the lieutenant governor was running had some effect, particularly about the bib company, that you essentially restructured it and it ended in the demise of the company. If you could, in your estimation, tell us what happened there. Did you try to turn it around, or what happened?
You talking about the company or the race?
No. Yes, the bib company.
Oh, absolutely. I did turn it around. I bought it in 1985, and it was losing $14 million a year. And within 2 years, they had it profitable, and it was doing quite well. In the 90s, though, the whole industry was under pressure and was heading offshore. So we had to go through a financial restructuring where we swapped bonds for debt. But no employees were affected. All their benefits were kept. Nobody was laid off. It was very similar to what happened to General Motors a year and a few months ago. And then at that point, I no longer had anything to do with the company. They brought in new management team, new board. And it was several years later that the company decided to close the mill that they were talking about in the ads. I had nothing to do with that. So it was a little unfair to accuse me of that. And they said the company and the town were shut down. It simply wasn't true. The company was subsequently sold to Dan River and continued its operations, so it wasn't shut down.
But you did the best for it that you did?
Yeah, and I think most of the employees there who knew me and knew what was going on in the company would tell you that the company did much better and survived longer than it would have otherwise without my involvement.
Right, and I bring that up, and I'm sure that Dan Malloy is going to bring it up, because the hallmark of this whole election and the hallmark really of your campaign has been getting Connecticut back to work. And so I think people want to know, well, how much success have you had creating jobs, and what kind of ideas do you have to create them? And that's why Eric's here with some good questions about your business plan.
So, Tom, a number of the candidates in the race, none of whom are still in the race, but touted their business experience as a major qualification to be governor. You have done the same. So I guess I'd be interested in hearing a little bit about what about your business background better qualifies you to be governor of Connecticut than the experience of Dan Malloy, who's actually run a government in Connecticut.
Right. Well, being an executive and running a large organization is more like being a governor than, for example, being a legislator. So what I was saying on the campaign trail is the types of leadership experience and being an executive and a manager is more relevant to being governor
than being mayor?
Than historically where governors have come from. And particularly understanding the economy and how jobs are created, I think is going to be a challenge facing the next governor, more so than in the past. So I think that is relevant experience. I think being a mayor of a city, I think the municipal employee count in Stamford was about 1,300 employees. That's pretty small. Our state workforce is 55,000. I ran a company that was quite a bit larger than the municipal workforce in Stamford. And I think running a large organization is really the key here from a management point of view.
Okay, so let's delve into that a little bit. What aspects of your actual historical business experience would be most useful, do you think, in the Connecticut of today, in running the state?
We're under very significant fiscal challenges, and so I think turning around business is very similar. You have a business that's challenged, the revenue side maybe has dropped, expenses have gone up, you need to figure out how to get them back in line. When Dan Malloy was mayor of Stamford, times were good, and so he was expanding the municipal workforce. It was a tax and spend culture, much the same as we've had in Hartford that's gotten us in the trouble we're in. So I think my experience turning around businesses is much more relevant to the challenges that Connecticut faces today.
Well, couldn't we also say, and I don't know if people are just hesitant to say this publicly, but let's say that there were a company that it would frankly be better off if you did close it down, if you did lay off people and close the business. Would you be willing to also do that? I mean, in government, say this department or this is not working out?
Well, part of what we need, part of the solution, which is in my plan, is to streamline government. Some agencies need to be consolidated. We need to eliminate waste where it exists. There were 2 commissions that were done, the Thomas Commission, the Hull Harper Commission in the 90s, that actually had recommendations for how to streamline and reduce the cost of government and actually make it more effective. Those recommendations were never implemented. I've said on the campaign trail that I would take those off the shelf, and the ones that still are applicable, we'd implement.
Let's talk about industries you see as most promising for job growth in Connecticut, specific industries that come to mind for you, and tell us what you think should be done to promote them.
Right. First of all, we need to make the state more employer-friendly. We've had policies here for far too long, 2.5 decades, that have really placed big burdens on employers, unfunded mandates, government-driven costs, and unresponsive government in the regulatory environment. So we need to make it easier for employers to employ people here. Once you've sort of feathered that nest, then you can reach out and get employers to come here from other states. We need to bring in high value-added jobs to replace the jobs that are migrating away from Connecticut. And I've identified 7 industries in my plan where Connecticut could be sold. We have wonderful assets in this state. We have some of the best academic institutions in the world. We have a highly trained and highly skilled workforce. We're centrally located in the Northeast, and so on and so forth. So,
what are some of those industries?
Yeah, well, I have pharmaceuticals, green technology, medical devices, alternative energy, R&D, for example. We already have financial services. We should continue to build on that, including insurance. And several others, which are listed there in the plan.
So when we just heard about the layoffs that are going to happen at Pratt & Whitney and Cheshire, I mean, when you hear that, you must think, well, the impetus really is on now. I mean, I got to act fast, right?
Well, the easiest thing to do will be to keep jobs that are here. And unfortunately, the policies we've had are driving employers to move jobs out of the state. I think that's a very unfortunate situation with Pratt & Whitney in Cheshire, but it is an example of where the government policies have made it virtually impossible for employers to keep certain types of jobs here, and they're leaving.
Which government policies do you find most objectionable from business's point of view?
Well, unfunded mandates. I know that United Technologies, I believe, had tried to put an expansion on one of their plants so they could actually expand employment there, and it took something like 19 months to get an approval from the Department of Environmental Protection. The legislature, every session, waits until the last 3 days to make any decisions, and then nobody knows what's going to come out, so business people can't plan. It's the rules of the game are getting changed every session of the legislature. So business people need certainty to make investments in human capital and capital equipment. And so if we don't have a long-term policy and policies that affect employers and their costs that they can rely on, they're not going to be willing to invest here. And I think that's one of the problems we have.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, but up next we're going to continue our conversation with Republican candidate for governor, Tom Foley.